Now, as Carl Jung said long ago and has been repeated often since then, but is still not often understood, individuation is not an achievement. Individuation is both a choice and a journey. It's a process, if you like. But I think really the key to individuation is the choice to embark upon a journey of self-discovery, of not self-completion, because again, we're not talking about something that has an end, something that has the qualities of an achievement. Individuation is more like a journey of exploration of the limits of oneself. And it's never complete because the limits of the self are never completely discerned and encapsulated. But at the very core of individuation is, of course, authenticity, a greater fullness of self, a feeling of one's possibilities, and a reckoning with these possibilities. Individuation, in fact, doesn't necessarily promise far greater inner peace that one currently has, say, in a non-individuated state, because we're not talking about a promise of achievement, a promise of riches, of possession of new things, whether they be traits or qualities or external objects. The choice, that in the life of INFJs, but I suspect in the life of people of every type, the choice that, at least for INFJs, I think, becomes quite front of mind between the ages of 25 and 35, probably was earlier in previous epochs, but this is the situation nowadays. It's a call to conscience, as Heidegger would say. It is really reckoning with one's authentic drive to be oneself. The problem, I think, in our society, and surely there were other issues in previous societies, I always like to emphasize that we don't want to say that it was better in the past. It's really tempting to idealize the past, but it's a mistake. In our day and age, where we are now, in our modern world, I think it would be no exaggeration to say that everything is very quickly turned into a goal with an end result, with an output, with something that is beneficial, namely an achievement. And it happens in all spheres of life. Of course, it happens in work, in our technological discourse, but it's in the MBTI community, in the personality community. I hear that kind of reasoning, I see that kind of reasoning all the time. People talking about, okay, I'm an ISTP, how can I get better NI? Because I want to do this, this, and that, and I need better NI to do this. I've even heard people in other communities being like, yeah, so about 6 months ago, I got NI. I got NI, or I got NE, or I got TE. The fact that you're getting a function, that you're obtaining it, that you're securing it, speaks volumes about this particular trope, this particular overarching fantasy of acquisition, talking about cognitive functions as if they are goods that one can or cannot acquire. The acquisition of traits in the self is something that is inculcated into us from an early age because of the way that our society is articulated and its particular structure and superstructure, its ideology, spoken or unspoken. What we have to understand is that regardless of what we may think about the ethos of our societies, this is just not how the self functions. This is not how psychology functions. So this is not how our own relationship to our functions operates, all right? So it's never a case of how am I to get this function? And in fact, the best way to not integrate a function further is to think about this function that you supposedly have or supposedly wants to have more of in terms of acquisition. Because if you relate to a part of yourself as something that is to be acquired, well, you're already alienating yourself from that part of yourself. You're creating a rift. You're cleaving, if you like, the link that is already there between you and, in this case, the part of yourself that you name a function. And in the process of individuation, one of the things that we reckon with is that these things are already in ourselves. And the question is not how to acquire them, thereby implying that they are not in us, but to acknowledge that they are in us and accepting them and allowing them to have more space in the operation of our mental life. And not just of our mental life, but in the interaction of our mental life and our embodied life. And this is always why when people try to describe what it is for an NI dominant to lead a harmonious life, I like to say, it doesn't have anything to do with becoming a visionary or a seer or trying to fit some of those completely projective, idealized notions of what NI dominance does when it excels. Excelling at NI dominance simply means that you can be focused on the projects for your life, and keeping in mind the project doesn't have to be materialistic, it doesn't have to be this or that, and it can be something very simple. I always talk about the life project because that's the way that NI dominance relates to existing, is to articulate a particular narrative oriented in a direction for one's life. And if you have that goal and you're able to stick to that goal, that's already individuation. One of the issues with our current day and age is that in addition to this culture of acquisition, we are facing very limited attention spans. We're constantly distracted, and for the younger generations, there are serious issues around the weakening of the superego functions, FE and TI for INFJs. That directly threatens the possibility of remaining focused on a life project, because in order to remain focused on a life project, you do need to have the call of conscience. You do need to have the call of the superego to keep you focused. If you don't have that, you're only going to try to gratify your drives through perception and experience. But if you only have your functions of perception, how are you going to have a life project? So again, this is a theme that keeps recurring in my work because it is so central. There can be no healthy NI, no completion of the NI project without the functions of judgment. It can be a life. If you enjoyed this video, guys, don't forget you can support me on Patreon. I can't do this without you, and I ask you to consider supporting me. I need you more than ever. The link below to my Patreon is available. You know that for a small amount every month or every year, you can go a long way towards supporting me and get access to cool perks on our Discord server, as well as a bonus video every 2-3 weeks. Just released one yesterday. Don't forget that you can also get my books. The latest one, The Infinite Soul and INFJ Life in Modern World. First link below. You should absolutely get it if you haven't yet. My books will really help you understand the INFJ way better and more depth than other books. The Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ, to this day still the deepest investigation into the INFJ mind and INFJ consciousness. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Take care and have a lovely day.